an interesting story. So I worked for the county I started with the county when I was 22 years old, but I was at the public defender's office. So in 93, I believe that's when I went to work there. Worked there for 8 years and was very fortunate to get a job with the town of Ida as their town clerk treasurer. And that next year was the first election I had ever conducted for anyone, and met Patsy Brown. She was the director at the time. So when I was doing the election, like I said, met Patsy Brown, and she happened to be looking for an assistant director. And she sat and talked with me for a very long time and thought I would be a perfect fit for their department. And I said, well, let me see what's going on with the town. Let me talk with the mayor. And so long story short, it worked out for everyone. Tim Taylor, who is the town clerk there now, I trained him. He came in and got the job. I left and came to work here at the Federal Registration Elections Office, and that was in 2002.
And you have navigated through some extraordinary changes during that time. What are some of the biggest changes you remember and during, it's a long time.
It is a long time, but I will say that I was put to the fire in 2002 because I came there in May, right before the June primary. And if you recall, in 2000 and leading into 2002, that was right off of the hanging chads in Florida. So there were big legislations federal legislation that was going through to change voting.
Right. And there were still people locally who remembered what happened here 15 years earlier that was really...
And that I didn't know until much later. So that year was really my year of learning. And then also once I was learning punch card by 2004, because of that HAVA Act that came out, the Help America Vote Act that came out, because of everything that happened with the hanging chads in Florida and the punch cards. In 2004 was my first presidential election. Plus we had a new system. We had to get rid of punch cards. And that was a challenge. Again, because I was new and just was learning what a primary was, what districts and precincts and polling locations, and navigating that and learning a new system after you just had learned punch cards was huge. And we were one of the first 16 counties that year to implement it because we still had punch cards. So we were I don't want to say guinea pigs, but we were the new kid on the block with that new electronic voting system. So that was, when you're talking hundreds and hundreds of poll managers you had to train, plus you're learning it, it was a challenge. That was a huge challenge. In 2006 is when I became director. And up until that point, I had been part of our state organization, which is comical. The acronym is SCARE, the South Carolina Association of Registration and Election Officials. I became very active and involved in SCARE. And through doing that and making sure that I was just well trained and really implementing some new policies and procedures, we became one of the counties that was looked to test, pilot test, being on committees that were vetting new systems and looking at new procedures. So I was very fortunate in also developing the staff. That having the staff be able to be here and me be able to travel around the country really and around the state, freeing up my time to learn and see what other states were doing and bring that back here. I think that's what helped put Anderson to the forefront of being one of the leaders in elections. And I enjoyed it. Learning and comparing, it was exciting to see what Texas does and what we do, or what California does and what we do. And then taking bits and pieces and making us better at elections, and not just taking their whole system, because there's not a perfect system, but you're always trying to drive that bus to get to that perfect system and get people on board that bus that will back up and say, okay, well, let's try that. Let's see how that works, just to make it more efficient and better for the voter, and keep it fair, transparent, and open through the whole process.
And you were elected the head of that organization, the state
I was.
organization, and you've been honored several times by them too.
I have. I worked my way through the organization, served on several committees as chair, then was elected first vice president and then president. So I got to serve for a little over 2 years. So then COVID hit, and didn't get to do as much as I wanted to in my last year as serving as president, but we saw a lot of great things that we were able to do via Zoom, and working with our legislators to get them to recognize, okay, one, we didn't close. So where a lot of facilities and businesses had to shut their doors during the pandemic, we were a critical infrastructure. We had primary elections coming up. We had the presidential, the general election in November, and none of that could stop. So working through that and being president of the organization, we found a way to talk to our legislators and keep the ball rolling and say, okay, if we're going to have these elections, how can we protect our voters at the polling locations? So we saw a lot of changes that I hope will stay in our laws for that reason, to protect our voters on election day, and the support, that monetary support, to provide us with the equipment that we needed to protect our voters in that environment. So we got their ear, and I hope that the organization can keep our legislators' ear from here on out.
And in Anderson County, had pretty good support from council. I think we were the first one to have cages to protect our things.
Absolutely, absolutely. So having seen the transition through elections and what the security measures need to be, not just with cybersecurity, but with the physical security, when we got the new equipment that was being bought by the state, we had to find a way to secure it. Make sure that when it's transported from our office to the polling location, that's a kind of a closed loop system. So in doing that, approached county council well before we got the new system, because we knew that it was coming. Our other system was just at its life expectancy. It was, declining in performance, needed a replacement system. Had kept them in the loop, let them know that, X amount of money it may be that we don't pay any for the new system. And if that's the case and it's not matching, what can we do to secure it? So found the cages that we were able to put all of the precincts equipment in, locked up, secure, because one of the challenges was we now had to deliver all the equipment and pick it up, where before the size of the equipment was such that our election workers could pick it up themselves, take it to the polling locations, and then bring it back. So we had that chain of custody, and we were confident in it. Now it's moving away from that. We need to deliver it. So with partnership with several other departments, we were able to look at, if we have these huge cages, how can we get it delivered safely and brought back? And like I said, it's under lock and key the entire time, password protected. So I'm very confident in the security measures that County Council saw that we needed and bought into by providing the funds for those cages.
So that was what I was going to ask you. You feel like of all the things you've seen over the decades here now, you feel confident what we've got now is a really secure, good system for voting?
I do. I really do. It is more of a closed system. It's still not connected to the internet. We have a system that is still in place where the State Election Commission is controlling the data and the programming to us, and then with us taking that, and then it's all here in our department under one roof. So it's not stored anywhere else. We have our security measures in place. And so when it leaves here after our testing, and we know when it winds up at the polls, and know when it's open that that is a closed system. We still have that chain of custody, still have those checks and balances to make sure that it wasn't tampered with. So I'm very pleased with the system that the state elected to purchase.
You mentioned your staff. One of the things I've heard people brag on that are from other states, and even people who suddenly their parents have aged out and they have to bring them in and all, is how patient and kind and gentle your staff has been with helping people
Right.
vote who need extra help. How did you get your staff to, or is that just the kind of people you hired, or how'd that work out?
So I've been very fortunate with the staff over the years, and had very little turnover with the staff. One of the reasons I believe is because we cross-train. First and foremost, you got to have confidence, and to gain the confidence in this type of career, you really need to know the basics and how it builds on each other, from voter registration to election day and everything in between. So from day one as director, I knew I wanted to have the staff cross-train. They have their primary responsibilities, but then also the philosophy, we work as a team. It takes a team effort to conduct elections and maintain voter registration rolls. So implementing that motto and adopting it, that we're a team, and then working together and each one knowing what the other one does, helps first. Then with the customer service, with our voters that come in, one of the things I try to instill with our workers is, when you're trying to conduct your business, put yourself in that person's shoes. That voter that comes in, or new voter that's coming in, candidate, anyone that's interested in the election process, they're not going to know what you know. So take it as a learning opportunity. It's where you get to train them and make them a better voter, a better citizen that is more knowledgeable of the whole election process. So I think with those efforts, that really has helped the staff to develop professionally. And that was the third component, is helping them become more professional, whether that's giving them the resources and the tools, the training. We have to have our continuing education. We have to be certified. So it takes 18 months to get that certification. Then you have where you have to take courses every year to maintain it. But have gone above and beyond and said, if you see a course that you want to take that's going to help you develop in communication, written communication, customer service, any of that you see is beneficial for you, let's do it. Send them, and giving them the time to do that and just build their confidence, their knowledge. So I think all that combined is what's helped the staff.
Well, I'm not sure there's any other group in the county that's had to change directions more often than this group. You keep talking about they change voting systems, they change the way they count, they change the way they do lots of things. And it's amazing you've been able to keep your staff on board with having to constantly relearn.
Right. So that is interesting that you bring up, because the former director, Patsy Brown, when I worked under her up until that 2002 era, when Help America Vote Act came out and was approved, there had really been no federal legislation that had changed the face of elections. And we had a conversation before she retired, and she said, it will never stop now. You're always going to have election laws changing now. And that has been so true. So it is constant. You know, we are mandated by local legislation that a lot of folks don't realize, that you know, procedures and policies, just like with zoning. Zoning referendum's a whole different animal when you get into that type of an election. State legislation is constantly changing now with the elections. And so when you take all three of those facets, it is that we talk about it in the office. We'll have our staff meetings. We will digest it, make sure that we understand it, ask the State Election Commission for assistance, even the State Attorney General's office, you know, how are you interpreting this? So again, I can't emphasize enough that the staff knows what their resources are and they know how to use them. So once we've been able to know where we go to get guidance, and then work through that, talk about it, make sure that we understand it, is how we've been able to keep up with this changing face of elections. And it's about to change again. There's a lot out there that is really being touched. One of the unique things about that I've learned over the years is we're sandwiched in this little corner where we got Georgia on one side and North Carolina on the other in the upstate. So we have to watch their legislation too, because we have to be able to articulate, that's not us, that's Georgia law, or that's North Carolina law, this is South Carolina law. So the biggest one that everybody will be familiar with is early voting. We don't have early voting, but Georgia and North Carolina does. South Carolina doesn't. We have absentee voting. Two very different things.
Well, and the professionalism you explained, but how do you explain maintaining a staff that, because I've been places that are professional and aren't very kind, but your
Right.
staff seems to be kind and sort of have a gentleness in doing something that's very clinical and very laid out. How do you explain that?
I think it
Have you heard
comes-
comments from people like this?
I have, and last year was huge. We had the long, and this is just to give you the insight of exactly what you're saying and drive home the point how gentle and kind they are. We had the longest lines ever in this building last year that wrapped all the way down and under the bridge. They were the voters were so patient, and so was the staff. One, I think, is because of the interview process and who we've had come on board. Beth Keaton is the assistant director, and she's been here a few months longer than I have. So she's been here exactly 20 years, and I've been here exactly 19, a little over, both of us. So when I became director and she became assistant director, we both had worked in environments that we knew we didn't want to put someone else in, and we wanted to make sure that we maintained the type of office and environment that was kind and patient. So when we were doing the interview process, we would always talk about the questions. How are we going to get those people that are applying to work in this career, in this department, to open up, to really let us know why they want to be part of the team? And we've been very fortunate that by doing that, we have a team, they honor each other, they talk to each other, they support each other, then that translates into what they're doing for the voters and the citizens in Anderson. And that's one of the hardest things for me to leave.
Well, what's next for you, Katy? Are you going to wake up and during early November, first week of November every year for a while and just get the shakes?
Probably. That they've already asked me to be an election worker and a poll manager, and I'm like, no, I don't think so. You know, first thing I want to do is I'm going to sleep in on election day. I hope. Not having to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and get ready and be here, and having that first hour of torture waiting for the polls to open, and that second hour after they open, from 6 to 8 a.m. Whew, I'm hoping to sleep through those hours. After that, I'm sincerely praying to see what doors open. I have no agenda. And that's
You're too young to be retired.
I am young. For me to be retiring, I'm very fortunate to have worked in county government for 28 years. Very fortunate. And to have started out as young as I did and had the opportunity. So no, I'm not just going to sit at home. Of course, I've got projects around the house I'm going to take care of first.
You're going to stay in this community?
Stay in this community. It's my community. I'm going to stay here. And just like I said, there's something, I don't know what that something is. So I've been blessed. So I'm waiting to see what my next blessing is.